Imagine a 20-year-old staring across a sliver of sea at an empire that has dominated the known world for 2 centuries. He has no navy, a mountain of debt, and an army of 30,000 men. And he decides, in that moment, to set the world on fire. In 334 BCE, Alexander of Macedon crossed the Hellespont, and in the decade that followed, he would shatter armies, dethrone kings, and carve a new map with the tip of his sword. This is not a story that slows down.
Forget the dusty marble statue in the museum. We are hunting the real Alexander, the man behind the legend. The visionary who wept for his horse, the brute who crucified doctors, the strategist who partied like a rock star and still found time to invent the globalized world 2,000 years before it existed. This is that story.
Before the conqueror, there was the boy. Forged by 2 legendary figures, his father, Philip of Macedon, built the most lethal professional army Europe had ever seen, and Alexander mastered it like a brutal video game. Every formation, every maneuver, perfected. His tutor was Aristotle, who taught him not just philosophy but medicine, zoology, and the epic tales of Homer. At 12, he saw what no one else could, that the untamable horse Bucephalus was spooked by its own shadow. By turning the horse to face the sun, he tamed it in minutes. It was the first glimpse of his genius. He didn't just see problems. He saw the single, hidden weakness that would make the whole structure collapse.
Spring 334 BCE.
Alexander doesn't just land in Asia. He hurls a spear into the soil, claiming the continent as his own. His first act is pure theater, a pilgrimage to the tomb of Achilles, declaring to his men, "We are the new heroes of a new Trojan War." A month later, at the Granicus River, the Persian governors see a reckless boy in a gleaming helmet and laugh. The laughter dies in their throats as Alexander's cavalry smashes through their center. An axe blow splits his helmet and nearly his skull, leaving a scar that becomes an instant legend. The message was carved onto his face for all to see. He bleeds, but his enemies will always bleed more. 1 year later, at Issus, the Persian king Darius III arrives with an army so vast it looks like a clerical error, perhaps 200,000 men. But Alexander sees only the narrow coastal plain, a perfect bottleneck. He pins the Persian horde against the sea, and their massive army implodes, tripping over itself in panic. Darius flees so fast he abandons his mother, his wife, and his children. That night, Alexander walks into the captured royal tent, sees the golden bath still warm, and says, "So this is what it is to be a king." He then takes Darius's family under his personal protection. Not just an act of mercy, but a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Overnight, cities across the Persian Empire begin to call him the King of Asia. Next stood Tyre, an island fortress a half-mile offshore, with walls so high they seemed to scrape the sky. His engineers told him a siege was impossible. Alexander's response was simple. "Then I will find new engineers." For 7 months, his army waged war not against men, but against the sea itself, building a massive stone causeway through the waves. When it was done, his siege towers rolled across the man-made land bridge. The city fell in a storm of violence. 8,000 were killed, 30,000 sold into slavery. It was a grim, brutal calculus, but in one stroke, he had broken the back of Persian naval power in the Mediterranean. Egypt welcomes him as a liberator. In the eerie silence of the Siwa oasis, the priests of the oracle greet him as the son of Zeus. Whether Alexander believes it or not, he understands its power. Then, on the coast, he sketches out the blueprint for a new city, using barley flour to mark the lines. He designs avenues wide enough to catch the sea breeze and cool the streets. This is Alexandria, a city built not just for trade, but for ideas. It was destined to house the world's greatest library, a beacon of knowledge. The books would come later, but the vision was pure Alexander. Fuse all cultures, gather all knowledge, and build the future. 331 BCE. On the plains of Gaugamela, Darius makes his last stand. He unveils scythed chariots, war elephants, and a battlefield leveled like a parking lot to give his army every advantage. It isn't enough. Alexander marches his army in a strange, oblique angle, stretching the Persian line thinner and thinner until it snaps. A gap opens. For the second time, Alexander charges directly at Darius. And for the second time, Darius runs. The Persian Empire crumbles. But in the looted capital of Persepolis, something in Alexander breaks. After a wild party, he orders the magnificent palace to be burned to the ground, an act of drunken revenge for Athens. He reportedly regrets it the next morning. For the first time, the cool, calculating commander had lost control. So who was the man inside the armor? His heart was a battlefield of contradictions. He loved his companion Hephaestion with the fierce loyalty of a brother. When Hephaestion died, Alexander starved himself with grief, then had the doctor crucified. He married the Bactrian princess Roxana for love, then married Darius's daughter Statera in a political ceremony designed to fuse two empires. When his horse Bucephalus finally died in India, he built a city to honor him. Yet this same man would execute his most loyal generals for questioning his adoption of Persian dress. He was a man who could weep over an animal and order a massacre before lunch. He was not a simple hero. He was terrifyingly human. India, 326 BCE. After fighting through monsoons and surviving battles against armies of elephants, his exhausted troops reach the Hyphasis River. They have marched to the edge of their known world, and they refuse to go one step further. Alexander pleads. He rants. He threatens to march on alone. His men cheer for him, and still refuse to move. The unstoppable force had finally met an immovable object, the will of his own men. The retreat through the Gadrosian desert is a nightmare worse than any battle. A death march where more men die of thirst than were ever killed by the sword. Alexander walks among them, sharing their last drops of water. But the dream has reached its limit. Back in Babylon, in 323 BCE, Alexander was already planning his next conquest. Arabia, then Carthage, then the circumnavigation of Africa. But a fever, brought on by malaria, poison, or perhaps just a life lived too hard and too fast, achieved what no army could. He died at 32. His physical empire was torn apart by his generals before his body was even cold. But his legacy was indestructible. The Greek language, art, and ideas he carried with him became the bedrock of a new world, leaving libraries, cities, and a common culture from Egypt to Afghanistan. What makes a man a legend? Perhaps it is the audacity to chase a dream so vast it seems insane, and the will to sprint toward it until your lungs give out or you run out of map. Alexander teaches us that greatness and destruction are often two sides of the same coin. He didn't just live a great life, he burned one. If this story was worth your time, hit the like button. Have questions about what happened next or the world he created? Drop them in the comments below. See you on the next one.